Good morning, everyone. Hope y'all are having a good week. Good morning as well. We're just gonna, like I said, we're gonna be respectful of everybody's time and just go ahead and kind of jump right into this and try to be cognizant of how much we spend on it because we know y'all need to get back to doing things. But talking about, we're in quarter two now, talking about things that are going to dictate price direction as we keep creeping up on harvest season coming in the fall. And there's going to be some factors that some things that we always have to watch out for, regardless of what's going on. Things like weather. We'll talk a little bit about what traders are looking at as far as potential production for crops given U.S. weather, what it's looking like in South America. We're right on that second crop now for corn. We're finishing up soybeans in South America, kind of what that's looking like for that as far as where price direction is going. We'll also talk about some acreage estimates and how that is, whether that's leaning prices bearish or bullish. We'll talk about what those are. And then also, we all know and recognize right now there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to just current events, whether that's the conflict in Iran, what export demand is looking like for us, and we'll talk about a few things that it could impact price direction for our crops at the moment. So just to get started here, and let me see if I can minimize this so I can see my screen, is looking at the U.S. drought monitor here. This was as of May 28th is when this comes out. And we all know probably more than likely everybody at some point or another across the state has gotten some rain in the last week or two. Some much needed rain. I will make mention of that. But when we're looking at this, what I wanted to do is we could look at the whole U.S., and that is going to have an impact, of course, what's happening in the Midwest, what's happening up there as weather. But I did want to show just a comparison from one week to another for Tennessee, and we can see just in that 1 week span. Now, I am not by any means saying that we are out of the clear. We definitely still have some impacts from drought that are lingering and are going to continue lingering as we get into our summer months. But with that, we can see here that that extreme drought, we have been able to reduce some of it within the state of Tennessee, especially out in West Tennessee, some of our major crop area. We've been able to reduce that back a little bit. But again, this can change from 1 week to the next. We can be back to having that extreme or severe drought that we see here. But these rains have been a little bit of a relief right now, but what we're going to have to again watch as we get into those critical production stages in June, July, and August for our crops as to where we go with this and what that's going to do for price direction. Now, looking at this from a standpoint based on crops, this is for the whole U.S. that we're looking at here, what is in drought at the time period. And I've got it laid here so we can see them all compared together. But what I want to break down is also Tennessee to kind of let you see state by state this way. So again, 25% of corn production is with an area experiencing drought. We can see Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, that area, major corn producing areas, that they are not in experiencing drought at the moment per se. Now again, this can change. This is on a week by week basis that these things can change. We see here, though, that we see Tennessee is experiencing, as we've already talked about, some drought in that. Breaking this down to show you state by state what percentages of that 25%. If we look here to the far right is where Tennessee is. 92% of our corn crop is in extreme drought at the moment. So again, our crop, even though only 25% of the U.S. corn crop is in drought, the percentage of Tennessee corn crop that is in drought at the moment is high. We're almost at 100% with this. And then let's see, where did I go with this? I hit my screen. This is for soybeans. 27% of soybean production is with an area experiencing drought with this. Again, those Midwest states, the Illinois, Iowa, this area, major crop area, is not experiencing drought at the moment. So that is going to, for traders, as far as when we're looking at potential production risk, they're not seeing it right now. And this could, again, in this situation, be producing record crops, and that's not going to help our prices by any means when we get closer to harvest season. But again, weather can change in an instant for this. We see right here with Tennessee, we are, if we look here again to the right-hand side, 89% of soybean crop is in extreme drought at the moment for our Tennessee producers. Not across the whole state, but 89% for Tennessee producers is in a drought at this time. Cotton, when looking at this, now this is a different story across the whole U.S., not just here in Tennessee. This is one of our lower ones right here. 78% of the cotton crop that's been planted is experiencing extreme drought right now. But if we look at this, we have states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, Arizona, Texas is at 85%, but those other states, 100% of their cotton crop at the time is experiencing drought. And we'll talk a little bit about this, about what this is doing to prices right now here in a second as far as regarding futures prices. Looking at the 5 and 7 day forecast for rain, again, now looking at this this is the next June 1st through June 8th, we are expected to get a little bit more rain. If we looked at last year's, we would have seen a lot more purples and reds at this time last year. So again, we're kind of right on par for what we're looking at. But what we're having to watch is these summer months, and what happens with that regarding production risk and to discussing weather. Giving you a 30-day forecast. Now this is what we want to show here is our monthly precipitation outlook. Is on this, when we look at this, we're neither above or below where we should be in previous years on our average of rain that we should receive during these next 30 days. Temperature, again, we're neither above or below where we have been in the past. So we could see higher temperatures, we could see lower temperatures than normal. So this is kind of right around where we want to be as we're going into this critical growing stages for our crops at the time. So looking at this, talking about what's been planted, what we're looking at is our current USDA acreage estimates. Well, I wanted to talk about this because acreage report is going to be released June 30th of this month. And this is a critical report simply because it takes what our planting intentions are to now what should be actually in the ground at this time. We go from a estimate to, they're all estimates, but we go from what we think will be planted to what actually is in the ground for these reports. And that's going to kind of drive what our supply is going to look like come harvest season, given weather, what our demand is going to look like given our supplies. And what we're looking at now for Tennessee, 1 million acres of corn. This is up from 900,000 acres last year. Soybeans, 1.5 million acres, 84.7 million acres for soybeans, that was down 4%. Cotton, 250,000 acres planted in Tennessee, and then our winter wheat was 270,000 acres for this state. And again, these are critical. These are these acreage estimates on the left-hand side is what we think was intended to be planted. And then now when this June 30th report comes out, we will be actually go from planting intentions to what hopefully has been planted in the ground so we can get an idea of where supply is in the fall. One thing that I did want to talk about since we are talking about acreage is base acres right now. So the update period just opened up for updating your ARC and PLC base acres. And what they are doing is they're notifying landowners by mail, and they're looking at your past plantings, things that have either been planted or prevent planted between 2019 and 2023. And what they're doing is they're going to show you an updated base acreage based on what you have planted during that time period. And what you will need to do is you need to let your FSA office know if you do not accept the updated base acres. And the reason that this is important, and I know probably everybody that is watching already recognizes this, but here in Tennessee, we're planting a whole lot of acres. We consistently plant a whole lot of acres that is not in that base acreage coverage for our crops, particularly in soybeans. And what this does is that any amendments that are made to the Farm Bill, such as higher reference prices, is it kind of makes those efforts to raise those reference prices null and void when we don't have base acreage cover in that. So we're really if we don't update our base acreage, we're preventing production protection for our crops because we're not being covered in this base acreage for our ARC and PLC. So again, this is something that you want to make sure that is taken care of. Work with your FSA office if we see something here that needs to be updated. What they're looking at is additional base acres for the state of Tennessee. They're looking at adding around 169, somewhere between 169 and 175,000 for corn. Soybeans is anywhere between 275 and 291. And then wheat again, 71 to 75. So just wanted to point this out when we were talking about this. This doesn't impact prices by any means at this point as far as futures prices or harvest prices, but it is still something that you need to be aware of that they are working to update these base acres for ARC and PLC payments. Talking about current events that are going on, there is a lot of price volatility and uncertainty right now. There's a lot of upswings and downturns in the markets at the moment, and a lot of it is due to the uncertainty around what's going on in our current domestic practices, current events, and also what's going on geopolitically as well in other countries. The Iran conflict, again, that's something that is having impacts on us. It's elevating those oil, gas prices, and fertilizer prices, and this is leading to tighter margins for producers when margins were already tight. One of the things that is triggering some upswings for prices is some momentum with trade negotiations with China, talks of potential peace treaties with the conflicts that are going on with Iran. Now, again, these are at the moment causing upswings in the markets, causing higher prices for us, but we can see a slide very quickly as we have seen these increase in prices if things don't go according to plan. One of the other things that I wanted to point out that is impacting our prices kind of on the side of lowering our prices is a stronger dollar. Right now, the U.S. has a very strong dollar, and what this is doing is basically making all of our export competition much cheaper than what we are. One of those particular that I wanted to point out is soybeans from Brazil, is that Brazil soybeans are a lot cheaper right now for other countries to import than it is for them to import from the U.S. So this is something that we have to watch as well. Again, a U.S. stronger dollar doesn't always necessarily mean a good thing when we look at the larger picture and how it impacts our trades with other countries. So looking at some seasonal trends here, just talking about this, I wanted to pull these out. I did pull these from the Tennessee market highlights, and I've got some more futures graphs to show you here in a second, but what I wanted to show here was more of, again, we know these seasonal trends. Right now, we're seeing these higher prices, we're seeing some increase in futures prices, but we also want to remember that as we keep going farther along in this growing period, the closer we get to harvest, we're going to see these declines start happening. And something, I'll probably say it again at some point or another, as producers, we never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And so right now, again, it's one of those times to be thinking about maybe locking in some prices. Now, I'm not saying lock in your entire price for your harvest season at this point for your entire crop, but think about some incremental pricing. Think about what we can price right now and get locked in order to cover some of our cost at the moment. So, because again, we know as we get closer to harvest season, we are going to see prices go downward again. Now, just to point out, when we're looking at futures prices, what happens in the Midwest impacts a lot more than what happens here in Tennessee. I wanted to make that note as well. November soybean futures, again, we see these upticks we see going right now as we get into these critical growing stages. We see prices raising a little bit, and again, this is impacted by weather concerns, uncertainty on global markets, trade negotiations, geopolitical events. Everything is occurring right now, and we are seeing these. But as we get closer to harvest, as we know more of that acreage report, what's going to be released at the end of June, we will start seeing prices go downward again. Uh, and I wanted to point these out again to show you these are more of the December futures right now, what we're seeing. And we saw that talking about that we never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. We had at one point $5 a bushel here that we could have locked in at a certain point. We already have seen that downward slide very quickly with this. And the one that I want to show is November soybeans. Is we keep seeing this uptick, and a lot of this has to do with energy prices, fuel prices, where they are, and we continue to keep seeing that to rise. So, with that being said, thinking about opportunities for price risk management here is trying to go ahead and lock in some prices, utilize the tools that we have to protect our costs so that we know we've got these tighter margins. How do we continue forward now to make sure that we're protected as we get closer to harvest season? The one December cotton futures, what I wanted to show with this one again, and we're in this downward slide at the moment, is that we've seen this upward slide because of the tightening supplies. I remember I told you when we looked at this, is that a lot of the cotton crop right now is in extreme drought. We've seen these upticks in this. This downward one is again just a little bit of demand for general economy is why we're seeing this little bit of a slide at the right now. But again, we keep seeing these cotton prices rise because of the concerns with tightening supplies at the moment. So where we want to go with this is take home message from this. Again, we're in a critical period right now with looking at production standpoint. That June 30th acreage report is going to be critical to know what's actually in the ground and what that's going to do. Are we going to have a bumper crop this year? Are we going to have a huge record-breaking crop somewhere along the way? They've said corn, 16 billion bushels. Feel free to argue with that as far as where that goes, if we're really going to have that large of a crop. But if they see that, that's going to impact prices the closer that we get to harvest when we have that much supply, and whether or not we have the demand for it domestically and abroad when we're looking at that. Again, input prices have been impacted. Margins are getting tighter and tighter. We don't have a lot of leeway in what our input prices are as we go forward and what they have been. So now is the time to think about how we manage our price risk on the output side. How do we make sure, again, we see prices going up at the moment. We see them coming down. We can never chase the highest price. We'll never get it. But if we're able to lock in a price, lock in some prices for part of our crops, do that incremental pricing, and think about what we can protect as far as our costs go. Uncertainty around the general economy. Again, this with cotton, we know that cotton prices are very, very around what the general economy is doing at the time, what the demand for clothing and textiles looks like. Again, we have to think about strategically removing risk and how we're going to handle these situations. I told you I'm going to say it multiple times. We never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. If we see prices higher right now, do we want to think about going ahead and locking that in to take care of ourselves and to cover what we need to before we hit harvest season? Again, prices can go up, prices could go down. We all recognize this. There's a lot of factors coming into play. Right now, the concerns around weather isn't there. So if that is the case, are we going to see prices continue to go lower and lower the closer we get to harvest without really any opportunities to take advantage of where the prices are now? So these are things for us to think about, discuss. If you have any questions, I'm welcome to email me. We can talk more. Aaron is always available as well. I know that he and I have talked about some things here and there lately of what's going on. But happy to answer any questions or look at anything if we need to.